Major news in Vancouver real estate today involving a prominent Vancouver developer filing for insolvency. In today's video, we're going to talk about what happened and what's likely to happen next and whether we're going to see this as a widespread issue in Vancouver real estate. Real quick before we get started, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in Vancouver and I make educational real estate content to help you in your real estate journey. I also make content to help you make your move in and around Vancouver. So if that sounds interesting to you, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. So the developer Coromandel Properties, they came on the scene in 2013 in Vancouver and they immediately started acquiring land in the Vancouver area with a specific focus on the Cambie Corridor area, which at the time, if you weren't tracking Vancouver real estate in 2014, 2015, etc., they were really touting that Cambie Corridor as being an extension of downtown Vancouver in terms of desirability for people to live. And during that time, a lot of developers and realtors were knocking doors, assembling land together, and some of the prices paid for this development land in a lot of instances were extreme prices. So some developers were picking up a lot of this land, waiting for upzoning to occur and going through the process with the city. So this developer, they started purchasing land, again, all of it in Vancouver, but mainly focused in Cambie Corridor. Over time, they ended up accumulating where they're at today, 16 active projects, a total of $700 million in debt. And just recently, they've been called now on $200 million of that debt, which they just don't have the cash flow to pay. So the developer acquires this land and they start going through the process with the city to be able to further these development projects. I should mention that of these 16 projects, they're not all at construction phase right now. A lot of them are pre-development. A lot of them are still in proposal stage with the city. So the developer starts going through this process. And as we've talked about on my channel, a lot of back and forth and a lot of time and delays were occurring when it came to getting these proposals pushed forward, whether it was waiting for rezoning, whether it was going back and forth with the city for amenity costs, whether it was going back and forth with the city in terms of how many social housing units needed to be in the developments. A lot of delays were happening. And what essentially happened is as these delays were occurring on land, development land that was purchased at peak prices, we saw interest rates increase, so the cost to service the debt increase, and we saw sale prices decrease at the same time. So it was a bit of a perfect storm what was happening. We had a developer that, let's not kid ourselves, was extremely aggressive in purchasing land, was forward thinking that, you know, the real estate market was going to be, I don't like to use the term, but was going to be bullish moving forward. And all of a sudden the delays are happening. They can't get these projects moving forward. Their margins are getting almost entirely eaten up by the decrease in real estate value. And now the lenders are saying, we need to get paid our funds. So oftentimes with these large development projects, and really any development project, I find that a lot of consumers don't realize how slim the profit margins are in these projects. So for example, a developer may be targeting on something like this 15% as a margin if they can achieve that. And if we look at the Vancouver real estate market over the last year or so, especially for a lot of this type of product, sale prices have come down approximately that much. So we have a scenario where all the profit margin in the pro forma has been wiped away by real estate values coming down. And when we look at interest rates specifically, so we went from a prime rate, essentially like a lending rate of under 2.5 in March of 2020, and it sits today at 6.7. So over the last 2 years, it's become almost 3 times as difficult to pay back this debt. And when you're hung up at the city trying to get the development project through, you're obviously in a tough spot to be able to repay any of that debt. Now, this developer, they did bring on a former city councilor as COO in 2019. I imagine this was done as a way to help kind of navigate the city system through city council, someone who has experience. Perhaps they could help speed along the trajectory to get some of these projects rolling. But ultimately, we ended up with a developer here that just had too much debt, too much land at a pre-construction phase, and now they're obviously having to file for insolvency. Now, when you look at some of the other larger developers out there, it's not uncommon to have multiple development projects on the go. A lot of the larger developers, they will have stuff in Vancouver, and then they'll have stuff in the Fraser Valley, other areas of BC or across Canada, and some of the large developers, they're also active in the US as well. The reason I mention this is developers that diversify based on location are also not putting all their eggs in one basket. So they're not reliant on any one real estate market having to perform well and not drop off essentially to put themselves at risk. They're able to spread the risk through different cities, through different areas around North America. In this case with this developer, I mean, they saw the future potential of Cambie Corridor. They went all in, so to speak, in Cambie Corridor and in Vancouver. The other thing to consider is with a lot of these Cambie Corridor type projects or projects on the west side of Vancouver, they carry an extremely high price per square foot. And when markets fall, that presale, that luxury type of presale product or that high-end product, it tends to get hit very hard. It's not like you're selling a 500 square foot, one bedroom presale in the Tri-Cities where there's still a very active market. When you're selling presale on the west side of Vancouver, it carries a much higher level of risk. So it was go big or go home for this developer, and now they're stuck in this position. So now quickly, we're just going to talk about what I foresee happening in the future now. This is not an isolated incident with this developer. I know for a fact that there are other developers feeling the strain of debt servicing right now. I know that there's developers in Ontario that have also closed their doors as well. So I don't think this is the last that we see of this type of a scenario. When I look at the Vancouver real estate market, anytime you take 2,000 potential units, and that's a rough calculation based on the outstanding projects and the land that Coromandel has. Anytime you take 2,000 units and you pull them out of the supply, or you extend or you delay that process and you're in a housing crisis, that doesn't bode well for housing prices coming down over the long term. I personally think that seeing this happen in the news right now, I think it puts a lot more value on the resale product, on a product that actually exists today. I think that is more valuable now. I think also from a pre-sale perspective, and I've talked about it on my channel, I think people are going to be very, very cognizant of the developers that they're working with, so they can mitigate their own personal risk, because like I've said on this channel before, when you're buying pre-sale, you are buying the reputation of that developer. So I think people are going to shift their focus a little bit towards resale, again, that tangible hard asset that exists today, versus a pre-sale where, again, you're buying the reputation of the developer and you're buying a contract. Now, if you're wondering what might happen to pre-sale deposits that are paid on some of this developer's projects, now all of that is governed by the disclosure statement of that specific project, but the Real Estate Development Marketing Act does say that deposits must be held in trust. So they're held in a third party type of a format, if you will. But sometimes what ends up happening when these sort of things happen is deposits get held for a long period of time while they're trying to figure out how to pay these other larger creditors, if you will. We can look to that project in Richmond, which I spoke about on this channel, where they had a similar issue. They basically couldn't move forward. They couldn't move forward with the project, so they actually put the land up for bid, the project up for bid, and they didn't receive bids on it from other developers. I think in this scenario, we're going to see a similar type of a process. When companies restructure their debt, they either offer equity for debt, which I don't see that as a possibility here. So I think we're probably going to see the similar bid process on some of these projects, on some of this land. We'll see what the appetite is for that. So this is going to be really important. It's going to be really important to watch what happens here, because again, I think there are other developers that are in this situation as well, and this definitely has the potential to affect the landscape of Vancouver real estate and already affect constrained supply of housing here in Vancouver. So guys, subscribe to this channel if you want to be kept up to date on all of these different happenings that's happening in Vancouver real estate right now and on the development side. I think there's going to be more stories we hear of this, and I'll cover this on this channel. If you need any real estate help yourself, you're in the Vancouver area and you want to talk to me one-on-one, you can click the Calendly link below in the description, or you can just send me a text, send me an email. We can chat about your situation. But man, this is a big story in Vancouver real estate. I hope you learned something in this channel. If you did, like the video so more people can learn from it as well. But outside of that, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.